So, first of all, if I sound very clogged up in the video, it's because I'm suffering from a very bad case of allergies. I'll do my best to edit out all of the sneezes and the sniffles, so if you are wondering about some of the more awkward cuts, now you know the reason. Anyways, since my allergies mean that I'm pretty much stuck inside for the unforeseeable future, I wanted to make a little bit of a budget video guide for one of my favorite character builds in Diablo 2. And that would be the Kick Assassin, or sometimes called the Kicksin. I'm gonna go over the strengths and the weaknesses of the character build, and then go over the gear, and then finish it off with some gameplay. We'll start off with the strengths. Your main attack, Dragon Talon, is one of the fastest attacks in the game. The insane attack speed is really good when combined with all kinds of procs and crushing blow. The Kicksin can clear any area in the game with decent clear speeds. This includes Uber Tristram. Your boss kill speed is very respectable thanks to your ability to apply crushing blow very fast. I'm guesstimating that the Kicksin is somewhere in the top 5 character builds in the entire game in terms of her boss kill speed. For a physical damage character, the Kicksin is actually not very gear dependent at all. It can work pretty well even with budget gear setup, as I will hopefully be able to demonstrate in this video. It also doesn't require the rune word Infinity on your merc like the Trapsin does. Now the Conviction aura is a great benefit to the Kicksin as well, but trust me when I say that you can do very well without it too. Your damage output is spread across many different forms of damage, the main bulk of it being physical damage with fire from corpse explosion as a supplement. You even have a little bit of lightning and poison damage from Death Sentry and your Venom. This means that immunities are rarely a problem. The Kicksin can use Dragon Flight to reposition minions, so the character doesn't really require Enigma to reach its full potential in a fight. For the weaknesses, while the Kicksin can clear any area in the game, I feel like there are really no places where the build is the absolute best. In my opinion, Kicksin's spot in the D2 hierarchy is the jack of all trades but the master of none. Kicksin does rely heavily on crushing blow and corpse explosion, and as you might know, those don't scale particularly well on higher player difficulties. This means that while the build can absolutely breeze through the lower difficulties, your clear speed will take a nosedive on players 8 hell, even with godly gear. The biggest problem with the Kicksin is that your main attack, Dragon Talon, is an interruptible attack. Being knocked into hit recovery or block frames when executing the attack will cancel it. You might still get the animation and hear the appropriate sound effects, but nothing is happening to the enemies. Getting surrounded and pummeled by a pack of extra fast or extra strong enemies can very easily get you killed because your Dragon Talon is constantly being interrupted by shield blocks or hit recovery. This is the main reason why I don't recommend ever going for a max block with a Kicksin. There is even an argument to be made for ditching the shield entirely and using a two-handed weapon like the Rip Cracker to get around this problem. And while this does ultimately increase your DPS by a small margin, I feel like your survivability just plummets too much at that point. You can learn to live with the interruptible attack and minimize your frustration by using Cloak of Shadows when engaging a big group of enemies, and by stepping back a little bit after teleporting in to get the enemies to target your minions instead of you. The design of Dragon Talon can also be a little bit wonky, and it's probably mostly due to the fact that it was originally designed to be used just to finish up an assassin combo and not to be spammed as the primary attack. There are a lot of things that just plain don't work with it, like Deadly Strike, attack rating boosts from your weapon, or plus damage from your charms. Then there are things that do work, but don't show up on the character screen, like elemental damage. Also, if hearing this sound constantly pisses you off, you might wanna stay clear of this character. all that out of the way, let's check out my budget Kicksin build. For the budget gear, I didn't want to use any high runes or any items that you couldn't get from Hell Mephisto. I think most of the items here fit the budget theme reasonably well. If you disagree, you can let me know in the comments. I also tried to favor items with little to no variables on them, so you wouldn't have to wait for a godly version of the item to drop. With my gear choices, I have 50% crushing blow, 50% faster hit recovery, which puts us over a good breakpoint at 48. We have maxed resistances, outside from the poison resist. We also have 30% deadly strike, which does absolutely nothing for us. For your stats, you want enough strength and dexterity to wear your items, and everything else will be going to vitality. Your goal will most likely be 156 strength to wear your boots and your shield, and I needed 136 dexterity to use a faceplate. You can go with more points into dexterity if you want to do the whole max blocking thing. However, I would recommend against it, because the block frames on a Kicksin can be a little bit annoying because they can interrupt your Dragon Talon attacks. For our martial arts skill tree, we have 20 points in the Dragon Talon. Now this is gonna be your main attack, and extra ranks gives you extra kicks, some kick damage and attack rating, so max it out. 1 point in the Dragon Claw and Dragon Tail as prerequisites to get to Dragon Flight. Now Dragon Flight allows you to teleport on top of your enemies, and this will be the main way you will use to reposition the Mercenary and your summon. My guess is you'll be using this all the time, so I definitely think it's worth the 3-point investment. For Shadow Disciplines, we have 1 point into Claw Mastery and Psychic Hammer as prerequisites, and then we have 1 point in the Burst of Speed. Now with my gear choices, I needed 2 points in the Burst of Speed to get to the highest possible attack speed breakpoint. However, if you happen to have any source of plus skills on your gear, which I do on my Switch here, you will be able to get by with just 1 point into this. 1 point into Weapon Block. This is just a prerequisite, since we're not going with the dual claw setup. 1 point into Cloak of Shadows. Now learning to utilize this one is vital when it comes to hell difficulty. The blind on it really helps when engaging a big group of enemies. 1 point into Fade. 1 point into Shadow Warrior. This is your first summon option. It's kind of like a crappier version of your own character. It's gonna be using the same skills that you have binded on your hotbar. I feel like it's pretty much only good for dying though, so I put just 1 point into it. 0 points in the Mind Blast. Now this is a useful skill, however I think you need some sort of plus skills and faster cast rate to make absolute best use out of it. Now you can test it out and see if you happen to like it. I think it's more of a Trapsin skill though. 20 points in the Venom. Venom isn't the biggest priority for you to max out, however you do want to max it out at some point. The poison damage from Venom is helpful when dealing with physical immune monsters and regenerating bosses. And 20 points into Shadow Master. This is the summon option I went with. The Shadow Master is way more independent than the Shadow Warrior. You don't have to babysit it around quite as much, and it can actually soak up some damage for you, and it can even use like crowd control abilities. Using a summon ain't absolutely necessary, but I think it's a big help, especially when running with a budget gear setup. For the traps, we have 20 points in the Death Sentry, and the Corpse Explosion from this thing will be our main source of AoE. Extra ranks don't actually increase the Corpse Explosion damage, they just increase the radius. I think you ultimately want to max it out though, since the extra radius does honestly help out quite a bit. And we have 1 point in Lightning Sentry, Charged Bolt Sentry and Shockwave, and then finally 12 points into Fire Blast. Now, using skill points into this one in 3-point increments will give your Death Sentry some extra shots. I put 12 points into it. It gave my Death Sentry 9 shots, and I felt like that was mostly enough for me to get the job done. For the gear, we are using Crescent Moon in a faceplate, and there are 2 reasons why I went with this particular weapon. And the first one would be the static field proc on striking. The static field goes together very well with the corpse explosion from your death sentry. Just gives you a nice source of AoE. And the second reason would be the fast base attack speed of the faceplate itself. 20 IAS that you get from the Crescent Moon rune word combined with the 27 that you get from 2-point burst of speed will be able to get you to the highest possible attack speed breakpoint. For the helmet we have G-Face. This is a boring choice, but I think it's overall the best one. Budget gear or guard gear, this will be your helm of choice. I'm running with an unsocketed version just for demonstrational purposes. For the gloves we have Dracools, and these are mainly just for the life tap proc. The life tap really increases the survivability of both you and your mercenary. And for the first ring we have Raven Frost. You really want some source of cannot be frozen on a melee character, and I feel like Raven Frost is ultimately the best choice to get it from. The cold damage on this thing can actually be a little bit annoying because it can shatter the enemy corpses, and you really want to keep those around for the corpse explosion. For our boots I'm using upped Gore Riders. You really want a good set of boots on your Kicksin because the boots do determine your kick damage. Another good option would be double upped Goblin Toes. I went with the Gore Riders over these things, even though the Goblin Toes have a little bit more crushing blow on them, because the Gore Riders do a little bit more kick damage, but mainly I prefer these because of the increased movement speed. Moving around with Goblin Toes just feels a little bit too sluggish for my taste. And for the shield we have Storm Shield. I think this is the best in slot choice for you. This shield is really the main reason why you are able to survive in melee range even in hell difficulty. I suggest socketing your Storm Shield with whatever nice you happen to have. I have a perfect diamond in this one. For the body armor we have Smoke. For 2 crap runes you get a nice source of 50 all res and 20 hit recovery. Now the Archon plate isn't the most easy to acquire base for it. The reason I'm using it is I happen to drop a superior Archon plate with 2 open sockets, and I really wanted to use it for something, so here it is. Honestly though, like any good light armor base with decent defense on it will get the job done as well. Another fine option for the body armor might be the rune word Duress. I opted against using it though because I didn't want to include another rune word that required an armor rune to make in a budget gear guide. With the aforementioned items you should have your most important bases covered, so the remaining item slots you can fill with whatever you happen to need. I can quickly go over what I have on this character. For the belt I went with IK belt, mainly because of the strength increase and the boost to 2 of the most relevant resistances. Some other good options would be upped Night Smoke. This can help with your mana issues, and if you don't happen to need the resistances, a String of Ears would be a good option. If you get one that rolls 15 damage reduction, you can actually get the damage reduction cap, which is capped at 50% together with the Storm Shield. For my second ring I have this rare Mana Leech ring. I wanted some sort of Mana Leech on this character, and the second ring slot seemed like a good place to get it from. This one also happens to give me a little bit of fire res, and it helps when capping out my fire resistance. An ideal rare ring might look a little bit more something like this one here. And for the amulet we have a magic amulet with some plus strength and plus resistances. Plus 25 all rares can be very helpful, especially when running without Torch and Annie. If you don't happen to have stuff like this, don't worry, I'm sure it'll be relatively easy for you to gamble something better. For our switch we have 2 claws that boost your shadow disciplines. Now the ideal claws might give you plus 3 to Shadow Master and plus 3 to Venom, even maybe some points into Burst of Speed. However, I don't recommend going for those since these are a temporary solution. You will most likely want a Call to Arms and Spirit here on Switch. I was able to vendor shop these 2 in under 10 minutes I think, so it shouldn't be too difficult for you to acquire a set of these. For your inventory you are mainly looking for charms that give you life, resistances and attack rating. Even some elemental damage small charms can be beneficial. I'm mostly using low-level charms here that you might honestly find by just playing through the game. And I also have this one faster run-walk charm. The way the game determines your run-walk speed is in increments of 5, so you might want to have 1 or 2 small charms like this one to get you to a breakpoint. For my Mercenary, I'm using the Act 2 Might Merc. You don't want to go with the Holy Freeze Merc, because Holy Freeze means more shattered corpses, and that means less corpse explosions. When I did my playthrough with this character years ago, I was actually using the Act 2 Defiance Merc for the longest time, and I discovered that it was honestly not that bad. So if you want to have a more defensive Mercenary option, you can try that one. For this character though, I went with the Might Merc. For the armor, we have Treachery, and this is probably the best budget Merc armor in the game. The Fate proc will give the Merc some extra tankiness, but mainly you want to use this thing for the increased attack speed. For the helm, we have Steel Skull. This gives the Merc a little bit of life leech, but the main reason I went with this one is because the 10 IAS will help me reach an attack speed breakpoint without having to spend a socket quest or a 15 IAS jewel on a suboptimal helmet. I think this helm is a cool temporary solution to use on your Merc until you get your hands on something better. Do not socket it with anything, you will most likely use something else later on, but for the purposes of budget gear this gets the job done. For the Mercenary, I have the same rune word as I have on my own weapon, but this one I made into an ethereal giant thresher. The idea here is the same. We are trying to maximize the amount of static field procs we are getting, because those will increase our AoE and thus increase our clear speed. Ideally, you want either a Thresher or a Giant Thresher for the base, since those have the fastest base speed out of all the pole arms. You might not be able to get your hands on a 3 open socket Ethereal Threshers too easily, so if you don't have one, you can make one into an Ogre Axe or Great Pole Axe as well. At that point you can also switch your helmet into something like Talras's Horadric Crest, since the 10 IAS from Steel Skull will not help you reach a breakpoint with those. The reason I'm not using a Reaper's Toll Mercenary setup, by the way, is that the Decrepify proc will override the life tap on Raccoons. I think that the life tap proc is overall more useful for the Kicksin. I'm gonna leave you off with some unnarrated gameplay footage with this character. I'm not trying to break any sort of speed record in here. We'll be doing a very chill Chaos Sanctuary run, and after that we'll be going to do a Bale run. There are some occasional frame drops in the footage. For some reason the capture software I'm using just sometimes goes nuts when capturing the glide footage from Diablo. There's really not much I can do about that, so I hope you can live with it. I hope you like this guide. I'll see you later.
need mana.